Good morning and good day, dear students. Welcome to our module, Counseling and Learner Support 1. This is a module which is across most of the diploma courses, and the presentation is subject content which we are going through, and this subject content is now going to touch on all the upcoming examination: April, May, August, as well as November. So there will be no individual recording regarding the examination. All is included in this. My name is Aina Simpson. My contact number is 081 24 57456, as well as my email ainasimpson@gmail.com. Let us see what the module has for us. This is the module which helps us to understand what we do. And I would like to ask you to be hardworking, dedicated, and self-driven students, because remember, this is your own study and you must be the principal of your own work. This presentation will take us through the subject content, as I said earlier, as well as some common mistakes done in the previous examination by previous students. The subject overview has this for us. Welcome to the world of teacher education and counseling and learner support. As a teacher, you are expected to understand the well-being of children and adolescents to enable you to help them. This must be very clear to us all, that if you do not understand the learner you are working with, how are you able to assist this particular learner? Information learned in this module should achieve a holistic view of teaching practices and learning. So whatever we are going to learn in this module, it should help us to understand a child. It should also help us to carry on with our teaching and learning. Education institutions need to counsel and support learners to promote emotions and skills that enable learners to benefit most from the education. Counseling and support services helps learners to understand themselves better, discover personal abilities, and develop goals. All in all is we need to understand the child. We need to help the child only when we understand the child, and the child also will be able to understand him or herself. Work assessed are not only aimed at assessing module factual knowledge, but also assessing the ability of the students to apply knowledge in practical situations. As we go through the module, the questions you expect in examination, these are questions which are not only factual, but we also expect students to have the knowledge in answering practical questions, not only to memorize or not only the area that you have memorized. Students need to know the exit learning outcomes and exercises of each unit, and as they will prepare students towards any form of assessment. As we go through the module, we have the exit learning outcomes. Basically, this tells us what is each unit entails. So as a student, it's your duty to study and know what each unit has for us. Know the meaning of the action verbs in the study guide in order to understand the question demands. In this way, you will know what is expected of you when answering these questions. So basically here we are informed that when we look at questions, we should be able to understand the action verbs. If it says describe, then you should understand what describe is. If it says discuss or analyze, then at least you must have an idea of what it is. So all this information appear in your study guides. They are there. The assessment policy goes, a final pass mark of 50% is required. It's calculated by 60 of the examination mark, and then take 40% from the semester, which is the continuous assessment. In this case, these are the marks from the assignments. And then in total, a sub-minimum of 50% must be obtained in the examination, meaning our examination is out of 120. You are expected, at least in order to pass, you should score 60 marks out of 120 in order for you to pass your exam. And then our examination will be a 2.5 hours. That is the duration of the examination. And then, as I said earlier, it's out of 120. There are open-ended questions that examines your understanding and application of knowledge, skills, and ideas. That is how our questions will look like. Answers are to be written on an examination script, as it happens that the same question paper you receive, there are open spaces where you need to answer, to write your answers. Let us now look at the content, at the unit content, what it has for us. Exit learning outcomes. The first unit is talking about discuss approaches to and phases of counseling of learners. Now in this, we have discuss the behavior approach. We are looking at discuss the phases of counseling process, explain basic communication skills in the counseling process, explain the attitudes of a good counselor, describe the educational rights of learners. Now, when we look at the very first unit, how do you understand holistic approach? In as far as counseling of learners, the approach is created by a South African philosopher, Jan Smith, and appears in 1926. Holistic approach to counseling addresses the person's mind, body, and spirit. That is its work. It refers to meaning all, complete, whole, entire, totality. All these words, they are an explanation of what holistic is. It has objectives, how it is applied by the teacher in the classroom in as far as counseling is concerned. That is, we find it on page 26 of your study guide. So in other words, when we are talking of holistic approach, we should talk of a whole child. We are not deciding what area to talk about and what area to leave out. Teachers are responsible for providing a secure, caring, and stimulating environment for learners to develop emotional, intellectually, physically, and socially to reach their full potential. Each learner in a classroom should be treated as an individual with a unique needs and difficulties. When we are working with our learners, we are not there to choose which learner to work with, and we are also not allowed to compare learners with others. Each learner is a unique person, and that is how they should be treated. Another approach, which is personal-centered by American psychologist Carl Rogers, developed to counseling that changed the traditional directive and interpretive practice of therapy. he prefers the client to patient. So Carl Roger came up with this person-centered. It's talking about a person, and he does not want to refer to the learners as they are patient. He rather opt to make use of a word client. This approach focuses on a person, not a problem. Its goals are to increase the client's self-esteem and to foster greater openness to experience. We are looking at a person as a whole. We are not looking at a problem. The therapist's role is to reverse the situation by increasing a person's self-worth and reduce the level of incongruence between the ideal self and actual self. We are looking at a person, and we do not need to leave out anything. And as we are looking at a person, we are looking at the person's idea. We are looking at the actual self, not anything else of the person. Problem-solving approach, its ultimately goal is to overcome obstacles and find solutions that best resolves issues, which are providing symptom relief, assisting clients in resolving pressing problems, and teaching learners strategies to prevent relapse. Now we are looking at problem solving as the word it says, or in its name. Basically, the idea here is to overcome the problems. It's to solve the problem, to overcome the problem, also to find ways and means how to solve a specific problem, and what strategies can we use in order to solve the problem. Then we move on to the 7 steps of problem solving cycle. Provides a practical model of finding solution to problems. And these are, when we are talking of problem solving cycle, we are allowed and we are asked to follow a certain order. In order for you to solve a certain problem, you first have to identify the problem, then you define it. After you see that this is the problem, what is it? That is what is meant by defining the problem. You form a strategy. Which way will you use in order to solve the problem? You organize your information, allocating the resources, monitoring the progress, and then evaluating the results. If you have to answer a question that requires you to write about the 7 steps of problem-solving cycle, make sure you write them in the correct order. Otherwise, it is not going to work out. There is no way you are going to monitor the progress if you did not identify the problem, if you don't know what the problem is, and you did not also formulate the strategies that you have to make use of. That must be very, very clear. It is very important to understand the sequence of these steps. So as I said earlier, the steps need to be respected. The client is responsible for improving his or her life. The therapist creates an environment where the client feels safe and not under judgment. And then we are also looking at, it facilitates the opportunity for clients to define and clarify their own goals and finding their ways, their own solution to problems. Its fundamental belief is that people normally tend to move towards growth and healing. And then we are also looking at the approach works well in the classroom and can be implemented with individual and group with techniques such as listening, accepting, understanding, and sharing. So when we are working on the problem solving, we make use of the steps, and also we look at what techniques do we need to make use of in order for our learners to understand. B.F. Skinner, considered the father of a behavioral approach. This approach is a theory of learning based on the idea that all behaviors are acquired through conditions. We are learning through conditions, and the theory is a theory of learning. You can only learn when there is a certain condition. Either that condition is positive or negative, and those conditions, they are given here, which occurs as classical or operant conditions, collectively known as learning theory. And now it is believed that our responses to environmental stimuli shape our actions. So you need to, if you need to pass your examination, for example, you cannot pass your examination if you haven't studied. And what is forcing you in order to pass your examination? You are looking at other students, for example, and then you make yourself you make it a point that in order for you to pass your test, then you need to study hard. So as you study hard, that is the condition which forces you to do something. You don't just automatically come up with something and you decide, I will learn from it. The behavioral approach emphasizes learning process and the altering of external influence to facilitate change in behavior. Outcome goals of treatment are set by the client, assisted by the counselor. Behavior approach to discipline and goal-directed tasks work better in the classroom. So as we said earlier, that each behavior, each approach has its own way how it works and how is it being used in a classroom. So it is now approaching to discipline and also goal-directed tasks. So the learner should be able to work on his own as directed by the task. Generally, goals are to create new conditions for learning and to increase personal choices. These are two conditions in this approach of learning, or the theory of learning. Operant conditions techniques are used to change overall behaviors shown when teachers exercising discipline in class. So when the teacher are exercising discipline in the class, we are looking at the operant conditions which changes the behavior of the learner. Both approaches have objectives and they are also applied in the classroom, as I mentioned earlier. Reinforcement techniques, this includes positive and negative. The positive one is when you praise a learner or when you reward a learner after the learner has done well, or if you want to reprimand a learner, it's still reinforcement for the learner to know that I cannot, if I do a particular activity, I will be punished or I will be reprimanded. That is the negative one. Then we move on with the phases of the counseling process. The phases of the counseling process, these actually are the steps of counseling. What has to be done when you counsel a learner? Then you have to establish, this is the order or the steps that follow. You establish the relationship with the learner. Then you assess the situation, you set goals, interventions, and terminations. For example, if you are to assess, to counsel a learner, you cannot start setting goals if you did not establish a relationship with the learner. So it means you need to follow the sequence. The sequence must be correct and respected. There is need for students to understand counseling process in the correct order. The idea is that one cannot perform counseling without following this process. The attitude of a good counselor. When we are talking of a good counselor, actually these are the characteristics. How do you present yourself? You should know yourself, you should be a respected person, appreciate themselves, they should also be original, which is authentic, have a sense of humor. A good counselor without these characteristics is not a counselor. I do not know what you will call yourself then. The principles for educational rights of learners, the right to equality, the best interest of the child has to prevail, the right to life and development, and respect of children's own ideas. Children have the right to education. As they have the right to education, everything should be done in the interest of the children, not in the interest of anything. It should be understood that learners do have rights to education and should be respected at all times. Then we move on to basic communication skills in the counseling process. These are skills that assist the client to facilitate changes while with the client. For example, you need to attentively listening and empathy. When we are talking of basic communication skills, these are the skills you need to have in order to do counseling. And that includes attentiveness, listening, empathy, probing questions, summarizing, integrating communication skills. So if you are not able to do this, if you are not able to listen to the client, there is no point how you will help the person. Because first of all, when you are sitting in this when you are sitting communicating to one another, there will be a time when you have to retell the story to the client, for the client to agree with you that yes, this is what I said, or this I did not say that. So all these are required to be understood and known. As a counselor, these communication skills should be understood and practiced. If these skills are not practiced well, unfortunately, counseling will not be performed correctly and yet not a success. The Namibian, we are moving on to Unit 2, which is talking about counseling and Namibian referral procedures. We are looking at policies used or followed when a learner has to be referred to who is in need of counseling. The Namibian guidance and counseling policy that include support group, school counselors, school management, and school and regional officers. These are the categories to be considered in the provision of education for learners with special needs or special education needs. There are warning signs that teacher or a counselor can look out for and should be aware of how to identify learners in need of counseling. Warnings are for anybody to decide that this learner is in need or the learner has a special need. Then you need to identify a learner, and usually there are warning signs. The warning signs fall in different categories that we have: emotional, behavioral, and physical and psychological. Basic counseling skills refers to gathering information and other support to the client. As we are working with the students, with the learners, we need to understand the basic counseling skills. What is it that you need to do, as we said earlier? So that is attentiveness, and don't become confused that again we are talking of listening here, because if you are to do basic counseling skills, definitely you should be able to listen to the client. And when you listen to the client, you should be able to paraphrase, you should be able to retell the story, you should be able to ask questions, and in those questions you can also ask probing questions where you are given an answer, and in the answer you are given, the answer can also detect that you can make use of another question, you can form a question from that. So we have attentiveness, listening and observation, paraphrasing and clarifying the problem, sending signals of acceptance, questioning and summarizing, being concrete and specific, using open-ended sentences, role play, what if a game, storytelling, music and art, therapy, metaphors, and working with parents. All these are basic communication, basic counseling skills. You can do all of them or you can do some of them. It depends on the problem that you find yourself, the problem that you would love to make use of. There has been a confusion between basic counseling skills and basic communication skills and techniques. Read this with understanding to avoid confusion should you have to answer a question on them. It's very, very important that we read all the fine letters in our study guide. Choosing a career. Knowing yourself and getting to know the occupation that you may wish to take up. When you are choosing a career, you should understand yourself. You should know what is that career offered. Referral procedures of the counseling process in Namibia. That includes learners with learning difficulties, special education needs, and also learners with other needs than special education needs. So those are the learners that need to be referred to. Educators should be aware of how to detect learners with disabilities at an early stage. If that happens, you are actually helping the learner so that the problem is early detected or early found out in order to assist the learner. Also, to be knowledgeable about intervention for appropriate care and placement of impaired learners. If the problem has been detected early, it gives you time to also intervene to find help or assistance for this particular learner. Arrangement for compensatory remedial education and alternative program to learners with severe learning needs, for example, intellectual impaired. So if the problem has been identified, then you can arrange for compensatory teaching or learner support teaching or remedial teaching that will help a learner so that the learner can then benefit from and possibly overcome the problem that he or she has encountered. That was it for module, for study unit 2. Then in study unit 3, we are talking of a holistic approach to learning support. An American psychologist, Steve Bronfenbrenner, developed a bioeconomical, ecological theory describing the interacting influence that have an effect on a developing child. Ecological systems, these are microforms innermost intimate circle. This person has an understanding that a child does not develop in isolation. There are different levels where a child is connected to. We have meso, where two or more microsystems interact. We have exo, it involves the linkage between two systems. At least one of the system does not directly involve the child. As we look at meso, these are the very close people with the child. These are the parents, the biological parents, the siblings, the brothers and sisters, uncle, aunts. Those are the people close to a child. And whenever the child is out there, the child learns from the people who are close to her or him. And then we are looking at macro consists of culture patterns like values, beliefs, customs, and economic and social systems. So All of us belong to a certain culture. We need to learn the values, we need to have our own beliefs, and we have our customs that we followed. So this is what is meant from the beginning to say a child does not develop in isolation. And then we have the chronal system in the outer circle, and which sometimes individual does not realize the impact of influence they experience from this system. Sometimes the help or the assistance from the very outer circle is not noticed, but it's still part of what a child needs to go through as the child develops. Students are expected to understand the 5 systems, know them in the correct order, and what each system entails. It has been noticed in the previous examination that most students never had an idea of what each system meant besides mentioning the names. But it's very important when you go back to your study guide, you should read and understand. And you are not restricted to the study guide only. You can also find other resources where they explain more or more to this system of Brenner. The multi-dimensional model of human development, there are different domains of development. A child develops or a learner develops in different ways. We have physical, it has to do with the physical and biological growth of the body. And then we are talking of cognitive, which has to do with the mind. That includes reasoning, thinking, memorizing, learning, and gathering information. And then we are also looking at psychosocial. Psycho has to do with emotional, with the feelings and the person's personality, while social points to human interaction, the relationships with parents and peers, others in an individual world. So all these are human development. We look at different of them. Influence on development. There are factors that have the influence on the way persons interpret their experiences and affect their development in totality. And we are looking at heredity. What is it that a child has inherited from the parents? And these are including the genes, which are DNA. And then we have the physical environment. As we know that the environment also influences how the child look or how the child grow. This has an impact on the environment on human beings, are influenced from the physical environment, such as overpopulation, the climate, temperatures available of food and oxygen, and presence of toxic gases in the atmosphere. That is the physical environment where the child grew up. And then we have a contextual influence. Environment also has social factors influencing the development of an individual. The person's daily life of work and play, school, church going, recreation, socializing, he comes in contact with other people. That's the contextual influence. Some ever-changing influences are family, neighborhood, community, and society, and maturity. So then on the next point, the principle to be considered in the planning learner support programs, members of the support group are to be in a close living or working relationship with the learners. Then have a special knowledge about the individuals and their specific abilities. Learner skills, needs, and learning styles are to be kept in mind. Short-term and long-term goals of the learner to develop social, academic, and life skills, expectation of learners and parents are considered. Program process as well as ethical conduct are considered. That is now the planning, how the learner should be supported, which program can be followed in order to support the learner. We have the IEP program, which is the Individualized Education Program, and of learner support. These are also done in the special way, in the correct order, in the correct in the sequence, correct sequence. Then for doing it, you need to request a special education eligible evaluation, and then you have to eligible evaluation, initial IEP meeting, monitor progress, and re-evaluation. So by then, you first start to evaluate the process, to evaluate the problem, what is need to be done. And then after you have evaluated that, you can call it a meeting with the people that should be in, the relevant people. And then after you have started, you have to monitor the progress, whether the process is moving smoothly, and you need to re-evaluate the process again. It's very important to know the steps in order to avoid confusion. That's very important. And then we move on to Unit 4. Problem-solving process. The problem-solving process is something we do not want in our life. A problem is something that we do not want in our lives. It needs a plan how to overcome an obstacle and what needs to be done to find a solution. At times we are aware of the problem but not sure what to do about it, meaning that we are aware of the problem but we don't know how to solve the problem. If that is the case, follow a set plan in deciding what to do. And there are problem-solving cycle. And then we have the identify the problem, we define the problem, we're forming the strategies, we take action, and then we evaluate whether the process has worked. And then we look at the demonstrate strategies used in problem solving by working from the desired goal to the current situation. Observe how the current situation differs from the desired goal and how to reduce the differences. So we are required to demonstrate the strategies how to solve the problem. And we look at how the problem is, we find the strategies, and we again look back to see whether it has worked or it did not work. Consider solution to similar problems, list all assumptions, questions, and suggestions, and test each one. It is very important to understand that in order to solve any problem, a set of plans has to be followed and as to how to go about solving the problem. Then we have the barriers that could prevent finding suitable solution to a problem that we find on those pages in our study guides. Different programs, the DBP on that page, and then DJP on that page. Reasons for substance abuse by learners. There are many reasons why adolescents tend to use alcohol and drugs. So that is very clear. Wherever we live, we hear this every other time that our children are involved in substance abuse. Reasons are grouped into the context of the individuals, the family, parents, friends and peers, and other reasons. Good reasons are expected to answer the questions on reasons of abusing substances, not only name, list, and groups only. Such answers won't be awarded good marks. For example, if you are asked a question and you only name and you did not explain, that will not award you good marks. 5 factors how individuals can manage money through budget. We all know what money is, and we are required to see how do you manage your money when you use a budget. Influence of key values on a person's life and choices. we are looking at the values on a person's life. That is the role of values in self-concept. How do you understand it? And the person, a peace of mind, interpersonal relations, social acceptance and status, and in staying out of trouble. So values are put in different categories. That was it for Unit 4, and we are looking at Unit 5, which is the strategies for preventing learners from dropping out of school. We need to find ways. Our learners are leaving school for different reasons, but then as a school or as an education sector, we need to find ways how to keep these learners at school. What can the school do to assist learners not to drop out of school? For such answers, students are welcome to provide any factors that are relevant in assisting learners not to drop out of school. Points factors provided in the study guide are not the only answers. You can also bring in other respected ones. The following have impact on learners' lives and learning. So the life of a learner can be impacted on the following areas like socio-economic deprivation, poverty as psychosocial economy status, learners from low SES home, physical development and health, family, neighborhood, psychosocial development and learning abilities. Under socio-economic deprivation, we have all those factors that could impact the child's or the learner's life and learning. Then we are looking at the definition of anxiety. It refers to anxious feeling which hampers a person's behavioral and cognitive functioning and draining their energy. The causes of anxiety differs from person to person. It can be caused by a combination of factors such as physical, environmental factors, and psychological factors, behavior and genetic factors. Interpersonal relationships of learners with relatives, peers, educators, and other societies. So when we are looking at how the child relates to people, we have a group of relatives, we have got peers, we have got educators, and we also have other members in the society. People interact with each other, establish and maintain an emotional bond with individuals, such as a relationship is found in positive and negative. It then brings some effects. That was it for Unit 5. And then we quickly look at good discipline, the practice of good discipline within a learner, within the children. That is now Unit 6. We are required to compare the autocratic and democratic approach to discipline of learners. And then in that, we are looking at effective discipline is to reaching and guiding children, not forcing them to obey. Autocratic put the teacher in command, while the democratic is more learner-centered. With the autocratic, the learner has a say, and the teacher has a say, and the children have no say, while the democratic, everybody is able to say something. Adolescence and self-discipline. Self-discipline is the ability to control yourself and make yourself work harder and behavior in a particular way without needing anyone else to tell you. That is the self-discipline. And then we are looking at acceptable discipline techniques, what is accepted and what is not accepted. The positive and negative reinforcement is accepted, consequences, warning, time out, those are the techniques that one can make use of, which are acceptable within the school. And we have the unacceptable ones which are not wanted in school, like harsh punishment, corporal punishment, shaming and labeling of learners, and this bring effects on the learners academic, because if this learner is ever beaten, I don't think that the learner will be able to like the school and they will be able to perform well in school. Those are the areas we need to look at. And then we have Unit 7, which is nutrition, nutrients and related health. This is basically talking about how a learner needs to be looked after, and sometimes there are a lack of proper nutrition, and then we are looking at what are the adequate nutrition, and if the learner has not enough nutrition, what would come after. Basically that is it will be there will be a disorder, which is a disease, and different diseases will come. Practices that support physical health. Physical health is supported by personal hygiene, health, exercise, rest, and recreation, health eating habits, abstinence from harmful substances and activities. So, and also the danger posed by obesity when a child is overweight. And then the danger of junk food, we need to eat proper food, not just any food we find. And then the last unit is now on HIV, where we need to know the difference between HIV and AIDS and the factors contributing to that disease and the new infection and the impact on the community. If people in the community are sick, what will happen there? And the difficult phases by the orphans whose parents died because of HIV, and the caring of and support of children affecting. It is advisable to understand the questions before you attempt them. And then the common mistakes is that you can you are expected to write legibly, and students should be able to, at least the spelling is a problem. As you study, as you learn, make sure that you know how to write the words fully, and also some of the answers are very limited. This is now from the previous group of students, and you are welcome to study and learn how to write, and also to understand and respect the questions demands. So you are free to give me a call on Mondays to Thursdays from that time 1400 hours 30 minutes and to 8 o'clock, and then Saturday and Sunday the same time from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the evening. And good luck with your studies.